Hey everybody, Frugal Farmer here. This is an old memory I've got. I lived in South Carolina for a spell when I was in college. Stayed on a lake down there called Santee Cooper. And there was an older gentleman who lived right near me. And I got to be good friends with this older gentleman. His first name was Sterling. I called him Mr. Sterling. And I'll not use his last name to protect his identity. Of course, he's long gone now. Mr. Sterling was a South Carolina gentleman. He was old school and a super nice fella. He'd gone to Clemson University, which is one of the foremost universities with their agriculture department, and he graduated with a degree in agriculture. Well, Mr. Sterling went to work with the Department of Agriculture and got a job as an agriculture advisor in Cuba. Well, by the time he was down there, the Batistas were in control of Cuba at that point. But around 56 to 58, Fidel Castro started doing guerrilla warfare down there. Well, one day, out of the blue, Mr. Sterling's boss showed up. And he said he figured he was going to get fired for something. But he was good at his job and his reports and all. Well, his boss told him there'd be another guy who would come talk to him. And he told him, he said, he'll have you doing extra duties. He said, you'll be compensated for it. He said, but you do what he says, and this is the end of it as far as any future conversations about it. And he said, I advise you to forget about it and never tell nobody. So anyway, another gentleman shows up, and they had codes, and Mr. Sterling was given an address to send letters to some relatives of his. He talked about how many chickens he'd seen that day, and like how cracked eggs were like explosions, and ducks were any ships that may be coming in providing assistance. And the Batista family was U.S. backed, but there were other ships slipping in to provide support for Castro. Well, he was down there until it was in '59, and you had American Industries had bought up like 70% of the sugar plantations down there, and the mafia was involved for drugs, alcohol, and gambling down there. And there's a scene in The Godfather where they're in Cuba, and that ain't too far from the truth on what was happening down there. Well, he wrote and wrote these letters, and finally he had to evacuate with everybody else. So he got out and came home, and he never wrote any more letters because he assumed they knew he had to evacuate. His boss never said nothing else about it. But he said he was doing his agriculture duties, but making other notes on stuff. And he said he kind of did it in clandestine ways where nobody really knew what he was doing, because he said as much as he didn't trust Castro, he didn't trust the Batista family either to imprison him, or he could just simply disappear somewhere. And I asked him, was he ever called upon again? And he said no. And he'd been a World War II guy, so those guys are cut from a different mold of cloth. They're just humble, brave men. But I always enjoyed living near him, but that was his one claim to fame. And I assume he shared this information with his family members. I don't know. He was a widower when I met him, and his kids, they lived all over the country. But he was a friend of mine, a very interesting gentleman. Thanks for stopping by. Come back again when you will. Share, comment, like, hit that subscribe button. God bless.